Imagine this. You walk into a neighborhood store. The cashier is laughing with the customer ahead of you. Have a great day. Your turn comes. The smile disappears. No conversation, barely any eye contact. You pay, start walking away, and notice the cashier watching you. Was that racism? Before you answer, here's the problem. I haven't told you the cashier's race. I haven't told you your race. I haven't told you whether the cashier watches every unfamiliar customer. Yet some of us may have already decided what happened. And that's exactly why racism can be so difficult to discuss. Sometimes racism is obvious. Someone says, I don't want people of that race around me. An employer refuses to hire someone specifically because of race. A landlord rejects a tenant because of skin color. Those situations aren't difficult to understand. The real debate begins when the evidence isn't so obvious. Imagine two people applying for the same job. Similar education, similar experience. One gets hired, the other doesn't. The rejected applicant is from a different racial background than the manager. Was it racism? We don't know. Maybe the successful applicant interviewed better. Maybe they had stronger references. Maybe there was another legitimate reason. One rejection doesn't prove discrimination. But now imagine the same company hiring again and again. Over several years, equally qualified candidates from one racial group repeatedly get rejected, while candidates from another group repeatedly get hired. Now, would you start asking questions? Probably. That's the difference between an isolated incident and a pattern. But let's make it harder. The manager says, I don't care about race. I just hire people I feel comfortable with. Sounds reasonable. But what if the people the manager feels comfortable with almost always look like the manager, talk like the manager, and come from similar backgrounds? Is that racism? Or is it simply human familiarity? And what if the manager doesn't even realize they're doing it? Can discrimination happen without someone consciously deciding to discriminate? That's where this debate becomes uncomfortable. Now imagine moving into a neighborhood where most residents belong to a different racial or cultural community. People mostly socialize with each other. Their children play together. They visit the same restaurants. They speak the same language. Nobody insults you. Nobody threatens you. But you feel like an outsider. Is the neighborhood racist? Not necessarily. Feeling uncomfortable doesn't automatically mean you're being discriminated against. Maybe these people have known one another for 20 years. Maybe they share a culture. Maybe nobody has actually prevented you from joining them. Now change one detail. You introduce yourself to a neighbor. The neighbor says, people like you don't belong here. Suddenly, the situation looks completely different. That's why context matters. And it's why two people can watch the same situation and reach completely different conclusions. One says, obviously racist. Another says, people call everything racist now. But sometimes neither person actually has enough information. Think about social media. Someone uploads a 15-second video. Millions watch it. Half the comments scream, racism. The other half say, stop playing the race card. But what happened before the recording? What happened afterward? Was everyone treated that way? Was this part of a pattern? We often don't know, but we've already chosen sides. Now let's make this personal. Imagine walking home late at night. Two strangers are approaching. You cross the street. Why? Was it their race, their clothing, their behavior, their age, the neighborhood, or simply because two strangers were approaching you late at night? You know your intention, but they don't. To them, your behavior might look completely different. That's an important problem. When judging ourselves, we know what we're thinking. When judging other people, we only see what they do. Now, consider stereotypes. Suppose a store owner has had several bad experiences with customers from a particular racial group. Eventually, the owner becomes suspicious whenever anyone from that group enters. The owner says, I'm not racist. I'm reacting to experience. Is that reasonable? Past experience can affect how we think. But here's the problem. Several individuals behaved badly. Now, a completely different person is being judged for something they never did. That new customer isn't responsible for strangers who happen to share their skin color. That's how stereotypes can develop. We take experiences with individuals and apply them to an entire group. And human beings do this with more than race. We make assumptions based on age, clothing, nationality, accents, neighborhoods, jobs, and social class. The problem begins when the category becomes more important than the individual standing in front of us. But there's another side to this debate. Suppose you have a terrible coworker who happens to be from another race. They're rude. They don't do their work. you don't like them. Someone says, you only dislike them because you're racist. Is that fair? No. People from different races can dislike each other for completely ordinary reasons. Not every argument between people of different races is racism. Not every rejection is discrimination. Not every rude employee is racist. If we call every negative interaction racism, the word loses meaning. But there's an opposite danger too. If we only accept racism when someone openly says, I hate your race, we may ignore real discrimination that isn't so obvious. So we're dealing with two possible mistakes: seeing racism where there isn't enough evidence, and refusing to see racism when evidence exists. Maybe the answer isn't immediately choosing a side. Maybe it's asking better questions. Were two people in similar situations treated differently? Was race actually relevant? Is there a repeated pattern? Is there another reasonable explanation? What evidence do we actually have? And here's an interesting question. Would you feel the same way if the races were reversed? Think about that one carefully, because sometimes changing the identity of the people changes our reaction even when the behavior remains exactly the same. Maybe racism isn't something we should automatically see everywhere, but it also isn't something we should automatically dismiss. Sometimes the most reasonable answer is, I don't know enough yet. But now we reach an even harder question. What if nobody hates anybody? What if people simply feel more comfortable around people who share their language, food, traditions, culture, or background? What if you choose to live in a neighborhood because people there are similar to you? Is that racism? Probably many of you are thinking, of course not. Okay, then let's change one thing. What if you don't want someone from another race moving into that neighborhood? Where does community end and discrimination begin? And would your answer change depending on which racial group was doing it? That's where part 2 begins. In part 2, we'll debate a much more uncomfortable question. Is it racism, or are we just more comfortable with our own community? Neighborhoods, friendships, workplaces, and communities, we're going directly into the gray area. So, tell me what you think in the comments. Can you always tell when something is racism? Or are we sometimes too quick or too reluctant to use the word? Keep the debate respectful. If you enjoyed this discussion, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might have a completely different opinion. And make sure you're subscribed for part 2, because the next question is simple to ask, but much harder to answer. Is wanting to be around people like yourself racism? To be continued.